I manage ISG. I hope you've heard of ISG, Information Services Group. We're a technology research and advisory business. So it's part research and analysis, and then part advice and implementation. And that, of course, involves strategy, it involves business case, it involves sourcing, of course, and then more and more it involves architecture, solution design, and implementation. I'm really excited about the type of change and the level of change which we're going to have in our lives over the next few years. I follow a guy called Gerd Leonard, who's a futurist. I follow quite a few of them, but this guy's really good. If you haven't heard of him, please have a look at him online. He says that humanity will change more in the next 20 years through technology than it has in the last 300. And if you think about that, then we're going to go through huge change in the next 20 years. The type of change we've gone through in 300 years has been a fantastic amount of change. It's been transformational. If we're really going to see that type of change happen in the next 20 years, then we need to hold on tight, because it's going to be a bumpy ride. So if we think we're going through a bit of a digital revolution, what do we mean by that? We look at some trends each year. We highlighted 8 this year. We effectively said, so digital will become the business. Every business will become digital. It's not just a channel that you do business by. Every business becomes a digital business. It's the only way of doing business. As a cloud becomes a predominant way of delivering services, whether that's public cloud or private cloud, as a service rather than as a cloud. Mobile becomes the only device that you use. You don't go home to fire up your laptop to book something. You'll book it on your mobile device as you're walking across London Bridge. Automation becomes incredibly important, or continues to become incredibly important. You automate where you can, using the right technology. It provides you with data which you can audit and use to improve things further. Agile enterprises, agile becomes a dominant operating model, not just in software design, but in the way that our business work. We can't think in an analog way, we've got to think in a digital way, and that means working in an agile way. Connected devices and Internet of Things come of age, the Internet of Everything. Social media becomes integrated, not just again as a second thought, if you like, another channel that you sort of think about or pay lip service to, but as an integral way of doing business. And blockchain and crypto are things which we're hearing more about. Blockchain is now becoming much more mainstream. I don't know if any of you saw this week that Walmart are now asking all of their vegetable suppliers, or they're mandating that they have to use their blockchain. I mean, that is a real groundbreaking change. If retailers start to use distributed ledger technology for their supply chain, enforcing them to use a blockchain, then we'll see others follow suit. So it really is coming of age, and then everything underpinned by cybersecurity. These are the types of technologies I refer to when we talk about digital, because digital can be one of those catch-all trend or terms which doesn't really mean anything to some people. 40% of businesses will die in the next 10 years if they don't figure out how to change their entire company to accommodate new technologies. It's not just about using a different channel, it's about transforming your entire business to be digital. Most businesses have started, 50% I would say, and this is probably more than that now. Most organizations have started doing some form of digital transformation program. 50% of programs are yet to be successful. This is data from McKinsey. Industries on average are only 40% digitized. There's still an awfully long way to go in the digital transformation journey, and it's not like a single journey either, because as soon as you get somewhere, then there'll be a new technology which you've got to adapt your organization to be able to adopt. So there's a huge industry being created, but how is it impacting the outsourcing industry? So what's changing as a result of digital technology? If you think about the mega trends that I talked about at the beginning, so each one of these trends, each one of these services, if you like, is being provided by the outsourcing community, as was if you were, and I'm sure there's members of the old outsourcing community here, if you were a provider of BPO services or ITO services, you will undoubtedly now have services around digital, around cloud, around mobile, around automation, around agile, and that's fueling a real expansion of our industry. We're going through and this is an example from Phil and the team at HFS, but if you look at what they call it, they're going into the hyper-connected economy. When we started out with shared services and outsourcing, we went into offshoring. I got involved in around, I suppose, mid-90s, when everything was about offshoring or setting up shared services. We then started outsourcing nearshore, or even in the UK. we started to think about cloud, as Mark said, about 10 years ago, I think, when we were talking about using cloud, which is now the dominant delivery model. We started talking about digital a few years ago, about RPA a few years ago. We're now, the conversation is all about AI and blockchain and 5G and what that means to your organization. And sort of 2020, we'll be talking about, autonomous supply chains, straight-through processing, digital assistance. We're going through phases, and you can see the change. And that change is creating demand for the outsourcing industry. If we look at some data, you see infrastructure as a service, so delivering your infrastructure in an as a service model. It's got a 3-year CAGR, a compound annual growth rate of 55%. It's increasing incredibly fast. Software as a service growing at 27%. We are seeing huge change in the industry. From an automation perspective, we see huge growth and huge interest in automation in all of its different forms, whether that's RPA, which is relatively simple, rules-based processing, which doesn't require any changes to the underlying infrastructure, whether it's image recognition, whether it's NLP, natural language processing, cognitive reasoning, conversational AI, which we're seeing lots of, if anyone's watching The Circle, whether The Circle actually is real, and you can really talk to the machine like that, but we will be talking to the machines like that fairly soon, the way Michael Knight talked to his car Kit, which was, again, is always my benchmark. Data extraction, natural language generation, these are all creating huge demand in our industry because every service provider wants to provide these type of services. Every consulting company like mine wants to consult in these services, and we're all changing our businesses, and it's creating more demand. We run an index on the outsourcing industry every quarter. We've been doing it for the last 67 quarters. The next one is next week. There's some data here from the second quarter. We're seeing the market annual contract value going up by 31%. People say outsourcing is dying or outsourcing is dead. It's absolutely not. It's an incredibly buoyant industry. It's just changed shape. It's a fragmented market. There were more IT outsourcing deals done in the UK last year than ever before. It's just they're different. It's a very, very fragmented market. If you look in 2002, the majority of deals were between 8 and 32 million annual contract value. But the majority now, if you look at the first half of 2018, are smaller contract values, right? So we've got 61% of them which are in the 4 to 8 million. I mean, so they're pretty small compared to the way they were 10 years ago. And contract durations have gone from 5 years or 5 to 7 years down to 2 to 3 years. They are becoming much more flexible, agile. You've got much more choice. So it's a more fragmented market, but it's still a very, very big market. There are also many more service providers in the mix. It used to be that you'd have the Accentures and the Atoses and the Capgeminis and the Cognizants and the IBMs, of course, all in the mix, and then you had all of the Indian heritage organizations who all came into the mix. There is now so many more organizations that a customer has the opportunity to work with, who offer different services, that offer platform services, that offer application service, that offer software as a service, or RPA services that are all competing in this market. So it's a very fragmented market, but it's a market full of choice, but it's a market that's also full of complexity, and it's changing all of the time. And digital products require new operating models, which is an incredibly important point. If you're moving to cloud, if you're moving to automation, if you're moving to agile and DevOps, you can't just take those different ways of working, those different delivery models, and assume that they will work in your old operating model. Things have to change. They lower cost, they improve productivity, they increase speed, but it means new operating models. So what does that mean? It means for organizations like the outsourcing service providers or the consultancies or the advisors, as we are, that we're all getting involved in target operating model design, in solution architecture, in change management, to help large traditional organizations pivot from analog ways of doing things to digital ways of doing things, to try and encompass and build in these new developments in digital technology. Another slide from Phil at HFS, but recent analysis that they did with KPMG said that only 30% of current outsourcing contracts are safe. 27% of them are likely to be renewed with their existing outsourced service provider, but they'll want more outcome-based deals, they'll want more cash on the table, they want it to be more innovative. 27% will likely change provider, 17% will either be automated or insourced. We are seeing a real change in the industry, but it's still a very, very buoyant industry. There's still lots of activity, but you can't be complacent as an outsourcing service provider anymore. So digital requires a very different approach to sourcing. Traditional approaches for delivering programs are not really working. 3 to 5 year long-term plans, the way we used to do Oracle implementations or SA implementations, are not the way we do things anymore. I can't imagine a CIO engaging us to do something like that now. Following waterfall methods that we've been in place for 40 years just doesn't cut it. Digital technology changes too quickly. Having architectures and following the same architectural model and assuming that's going to work again don't work. Not engaging with your organization between business and IT and finding out what your stakeholders want, your customers want in a local way, specific to individual geographies or individual functions, again, needs to be specific and tailored. It's no good trying to have a one-size-fits-all. And having business and IT separated and apart, again, it's just those models just don't work anymore, and that has to change. There are 4 fundamental foundation pillars, if you like, for how you go about doing digital transformation. The first one is to take your customers seriously and engage your customers. Rethink the customer journey. Think about how you engage with your customers. You need to use the best tools for the customer. That might be chatbots or virtual agents to reduce your cost or collect data, but it might be a human approach. And then you need to use technology to gather data on what your customers want. It's not just about asking them and going into customer forums and finding out what they want. You collect the data by using platform technology or cloud technology to gain that insight. The second thing you need to think about within digital transformation is engaging or empowering your employees. If you have a different experience that they have at home when they come to work, or you're not taking into account what they want or how they want to operate, then you will lose your employees. The way we work is changing fundamentally. There'll be more of us in the gig economy. We want more flexibility. We want to be working in different places. We're not just going to be employees who come to an office every day, but we want access to the right technology in the right forms, in the right places when we want it. And we need to orientate our businesses around that. And whether that's implementing a workplace by Facebook or a ServiceNow or whatever it might be to implement that, you need to listen to your employees in the same way that you listen to your customers, because they're effectively customers of yours as well. The third thing you need to think about is optimizing your operations. It's no good having a sexy front end or a fantastic digital experience for your customers if in the back office you've got a shared service center or an outsourced model which is designed 30 years ago and uses analog technology. So you've got to become as operationally efficient as you can. Now that might start with RPA at the very beginning to do tactical automation to reduce costs and then collect data. That will enable you to take a step back and look at your operating model and see how you can use automation in all of its forms to start transforming your operations. And if you're not doing that, then you will be more inefficient than your competitors, and life is going to be more difficult. So you need to think about how you streamline and optimize your operations. And the fourth area is to think about your products and how you deliver a product, whatever that product might be, and how you need to transform that product and be innovative and use agile methods so that you can change your product very, very quickly. It's no good having a product that you provide to your customers, whether it's B2C or B2B, which is static and doesn't change, because we change incredibly quickly. So you need to be able to change your product. And so therefore it's no good having a release cycle which works every 6 months or 9 months, or working with an infrastructure team which will take 6 weeks to get something live. You need to do that incredibly quickly now, because your competitors are doing it quickly. So what does that mean from a sourcing perspective? How do we go from this traditional sourcing world that most of us have grown up with to a new world of digital sourcing? And there are a number of themes I'll run through very quickly. We've gone from a cost-centric world with digital to a value-centric world. What do I mean by that? Well, it always used to be about your mess for less or reducing costs. That's why we outsourced. We're now outsourcing to increase value. We work out how much value we can generate by working together with an innovative service provider as in a partnership to deliver value. So the conversations that we have as advisors and experts in this field are not just about cost reduction now. They are sometimes, they include cost reduction, but about how do we deliver value together. We don't talk about suppliers of services anymore. We talk about partners in the digital world. We talk about collaborators. We talk about co-innovators. How can we work together better? The O word, the outsourcing word, which we don't, some organizations have never liked to use, doesn't actually get discussed that much. The way we think about working with service providers, it's not about outsourcing something to them. It's working in partnership and collaborating with them. We don't have, therefore, this zero-sum game, us and them type mentality anymore about working with partners. In a digital world, we need to be part of a single team wearing the same shirts. It should be very difficult to distinguish between who's who in a digital agile team. So we have a single team working together. We don't source in a horizontal way now, where we always used to have a, application development, application support, infrastructure, data center, network, operations. That's not the way to do things in an agile, fast-paced environment. So we have to take a vertical slice. You take a product team, which might be, improving customer service, and you work together in a multidiscipline team with people from all of those different disciplines working together in small teams, and that's the way you move to a more agile model. And organizations are gradually pivoting from a horizontal to a vertical operating model. We don't want to be working in silos where we have infrastructure and application development separate, or we have business and IT separate, which has always been the case in most organizations we've all worked in. That's been the case. They're in different areas, they're sitting in different places, we fill out tickets to talk to them. We now think about value streams. We've mapped value streams across the organization. We work out how we're going to deliver them in an agile way with business and technology all working together. The boundaries between the two are becoming more and more blurred. We don't do projects as much as we used to in the old world. We now think about products. We have product teams, and they work together throughout the product lifecycle. It's not just a project to do something with a finite start date and an end date. It's a product where the product team work together, and the product isn't a physical product. The product might be improving customer services. So you have objectives that you need to work towards, and you follow that throughout the lifecycle. So therefore, you don't have project managers in the same way you did before. You have product managers. You don't necessarily have functional teams working on a specific function of technology or finance and accounting or inventory management or whatever it might be. You'll have scrum teams working together in an agile way, small teams that get together daily to work out what it is they're going to do in the same way that they do with software development. We don't have this model which we always used to, especially in outsourcing, where we would build something with strict requirements. We would then hand it over to the business, or it would be handed over to be supported by the operations team. We have the same team doing both, which is such common sense, of course. Its skill sets have changed, and the way we think about these things have changed. So you build it, you run it. We don't accept business as usual anymore. Right? Once you built something, you know that it's going to change. It's going to change incredibly quickly. So you need to be constantly innovating and thinking about how you keep things fresh. So innovation is key. And we don't do things manually if we can help it. We'll automate everything. And I don't just mean automating business processes using RPA. We'll automate the testing process. We'll automate the software release cycle. We'll automate code development if we can. We'll automate everything. And we should be automating judiciously across our entire business wherever we can. We don't necessarily have service catalogs, we have portals. We used to, as an organization, make lots of our fees by helping to design service catalogs. We don't really do that anymore because we have real-time reporting accessed through a portal. So the digital world has changed all of that. And it's not about service level agreements and KPIs and watermelon effects. It's about real-time reporting. We should know exactly what we are getting at any point in time. It's not about RFPs as much as it used to. It's completely changed that world of sourcing where we would do an RFI and then an RFP and then a selection process which might take 9 months. We are doing hackathons for outsourcing deals effectively now. Really, really short spaces of time, service providers working together against each other for a week at a time or days at a time to create a minimal viable product, and then we'll decide how to proceed. It's a completely different mindset. We've gone from an era of having detailed requirements about something which we knew was going to be in place for 3 to 5 years to producing a minimal viable product and then deciding whether we want to proceed or not. It's so difficult to source in the old way when you don't know what it is you're going to be building. Right? You're going to get to something you think, oh, well, actually, now I think, yeah, I can use that as a business, so I will then proceed. How do you do that? It's a completely different mindset to the way we contract and the way that we source. So digital requires an agile way of thinking and an agile way of sourcing. We've gone from rigid ways of working, as I've said, to an agile way of working. So from rigid, responding to rigid, detailed, documented requirements, a paper-based, arm's-length RFP process, worlds which we're probably all familiar with, to an agile way of working, adopting an agile manifesto approach. And the agile manifesto came about through software development. Encourages collaboration, cross-discipline teams moving rapidly, prioritize working services over documentation. and maintaining flexibility to change at all times. And we brought that into the sourcing world. And agile sourcing has 4 key principles, which are common sense really, but not the way we've worked in the past. Individual interactions over processes and tools. It doesn't mean we don't use processes and tools, of course, we continue to use them, but we prefer face-to-face contact and we talk about what we're going to do together. Working services over comprehensive statements of work. We obviously need legal contracts, of course, but we prefer to get to a minimum viable product. We need to see something in action to decide how we're going to take it further. Collaborating with the customer over contract negotiation. You know, we're going to need law to underpin everything we do, but we're going to need to have dialogue to agree what we're going to do together. And responding to change and being agile over just blindly following a plan because it's written on paper. If I think about the, and apologies, it's quite a complex diagram that I created a while back. But if I think of sourcing 1.0, the area that, you know, the way that we used to work as advisors in this space, the sort of paradigm shift, if you like, was outsourcing. Outsourcing was a different model. We're not going to do it ourselves, we're going to get an expert to do it. And whether that was for finance and accounting, HR, IT infrastructure, apps development, whatever, you know, our job was to say, oh, is it outsourcing, offshoring, shared services? And then the job that my company did was, well, educate and provide market intelligence on what your options are. We then help you by creating a strategy and a business case. We then run a procurement process for you to select the right service provider at the right price. We put a contract in place. We then help you to transition services. And only at that point there would you start to realize any value. And then we'd go through and help you to manage the relationship and ensure you had some continuous improvement. And that whole process might take 12 months. I mean, for big, complex things, it might take longer than that. And that was the world that we lived in. But the world that we live in now is all around digital orchestration. Outsourcing is no longer the paradigm shift. All large organizations outsource in one shape or form. What we're trying to do now is to partner for operational efficiency, for agility, scalability, user experience, to help organizations do things better through partnership, through collaboration, through innovation. And you've got the 4 lenses that you need to look at: the customer, the employee, the product, the operations. You've got different technologies which you need to feed into the mix, whether that's cloud, big data, network, AI, blockchain, automation. And you work together to ideate, which I know is a horrible consulting word, but you know, you're thinking about things together in partnership. You're then testing and learning together. You can start realizing value earlier. You then explore how to change things together. Then you scale. You take feedback from customers, you take feedback from your supply base, and then you change, and then you scale, and you continually evolve. It's gone from being a linear model to a circular model. And of course, all of that's underpinned by commercial and contractual terms, by operating model, and by governance and orchestration. All of the consultancies in this space and all the service providers will have different models they go through. We call ours at ISG Future Source. Who effectively, and this is, you know, it's a real change. It might not mean much to you guys, but to me, I've been doing this for 20 years, and I know some of you guys in the audience have as well. But you know, from going to do from beginning to end of a complex outsourcing agreement, 6 to 9 months would have been sort of finger in the air stuff. We now do it in 3 5-week sprints, from beginning to end. That is just unbelievable, the change in the way that we now do complex sourcing transactions. We've taken an agile mindset to the way that we do sourcing. Contracts need to change and be flexible as well. If we just have a long-term approach to contracting, thinking we're going to do things in the same way for that 5 to 7 years or 3 to 5 years, it's just simply not going to work in an agile world. We can, of course, use for commercial parts of the contract, we can use time and materials, we can use fixed price, we can split things into small chunks to make life easier and to manage risk. But all of those come with pros and cons, and none of them are right or wrong. And you can, of course, use all of them. But there are a couple of ways in which we do this for agile and digital contracts. One is having a points-based approach, and a point is based on a level of complexity. So something that is complex would be, let's say, 10 points, and something which is easier would be 1 or 2 points. It's not based on the number of people the provider uses, it's not based on how long it takes. It's based on the level of complexity which you agree together. And then you say, well, this next sprint that we're going to deliver, this backlog of functionality we're going to deliver is about 3 points. Do we both agree with that? Yes, we do, and then we'll go off and do it at a point in time. So a points-based system we use for agile and digital programs. Or there's something called the cone of uncertainty, which I like, which is pretty common sense. But you have a different way of contracting at every stage of the relationship. At the very, very beginning, the cone is pretty big because you don't know each other and you're getting together to work together to create something, to create, let's say, a minimal viable product. And at the very beginning, when you're courting, you're getting to know each other. That might be 100% FTE based for a short period of time, just time and materials. For example, you still might manage or measure client satisfaction. You will still have some form of KPIs together. But at that point, you run a sprint to deliver your product, and then you say, right, we're going to have a slightly different approach. We're going to become engaged. We've made our decision. We're going to work together. We then might split the way we do contracts. We'll have, let's say, 70% of it on as a FTE-based contract and 30% of it based on the functionality that we're going to develop together. And then at sprints 12 to 15, we're going to agree that we're going to formalize things and get married. And then we're going to have like 100% outcome-based contract where we work together in through partnership. So you have different phases, you will have a different approach to contracting. So agreeing at the very beginning for the entire 3-year relationship, let's say, is just a bonkers way of doing things now. So digital requires new operating models as well. As I've mentioned, it's no good just having the standard old architecture way of doing things. You now need to have a completely different way of doing things. And thinking about that, the way we work is going to change, right? This is another McKinsey quote. By 2030, as many as 375 million workers, or 14% of the global workforce, may need to switch occupational categories as digitization, automation, and advances in AI disrupt the world of work. We are going to change the way we work. Automation is absolutely going to hollow out the workforce. It'll still be the same probably at the top and at the bottom, but there's a whole swathe in the middle which are going to be replaced by technology. If you're in reconciliation, in finance and accounting, in invoice processing, those roles will be absolutely impacted by technology. They're not necessarily going to go away, but you might want to retrain people in finance to do something in customer services or to design the robots of the future. And that whole retraining is going to be a really big demand, I believe, over the next 5 to 10 years. But you need to be thinking about that. So how is your operating model, how's your organization going to change? Just doing things in the same way with the same structures isn't going to work going forward. We are going to work in different ways. 20 to 30% of the working age population in the US and the European Union is already engaged in independent work. We will have multiple jobs in the future. 43% of US workers will be freelance by 2020. That's a huge statistic. That doesn't mean that's the only thing they will do. They'll probably have a full-time job, but then they'll also be an Uber driver, or they will also work for TaskRabbit, or they will do something different. We will have multiple jobs, and we need to think about how we change our existing organizations now to adapt for the gig economy as it progresses. If we don't do that, if we take artificial intelligence and robotics and cloud and 5G and big data, all of the things that I've talked about, and you put it into an existing operating model and you don't change the way your company works, it's like taking a jet engine and putting it onto a Wright Brothers plane, which is what this is. It just won't work, right? So you've got to change your organization. So some final thoughts. Digital changes everything, right? It's not just a channel, it's fundamental to the way an industry works. It is an industry. There is no other industry which isn't digital. If it's impacting farming and fishing in the same way that it's impacting financial services and manufacturing. Digital change is happening very fast. It's happening now. It's not finite. It will continue to evolve, and we need to be going along on that journey with it. It requires new ways of thinking, and remember, customers, employees, products, and operations are the 4 lenses which are traditionally used. It requires flexible, agile operating models, different sourcing methods, and different contracting techniques. So a couple of things to leave you with. I've mentioned this already, but convenience trumps loyalty. You need to ensure that your products and services are oriented around your customers' individual, personal needs. And if they're not, then your customers will go somewhere else. To transform to agile, if you're not working in an agile way, not just in software development, which is what people think. We go into organizations and say, well, we're already doing agile because we've got people standing up in the morning and having meetings. It's not, you need to fundamentally transform the way that your business works, both technology and business. You need to automate judiciously. If you haven't got an automation program going on in your organization, then you should have. That doesn't mean you use RPA for everything. It just means you're thinking about how you are stripping out inefficiencies from your business processes using technology, because if you're not, your competitors fundamentally are. Don't think of technology as replacing people, though, especially with things like RPA and AI. I always like to use this metaphor that you use it as an exoskeleton. You know, you still want, it supports people who are learning to walk again. You don't want it to replace you. You want to be able to walk. You want it to support you. It augments what you are doing. We do hundreds of RPA programs. We don't see them replacing lots of people. We see them enhancing what those people do, supporting people and augmenting them. Deliver things as a service where you can, whether that's Office 365 or ServiceNow or Salesforce, but move to a platform-based model for technology and business. And start thinking about the workplace of the future now and what that needs to look like, because the how, where, what, when, who, and why we work will all change very, very fast. So I think we all need to get ready. I'll leave you with I used to work at GE. I spent 6 or 7 years working for Jack Welch, and I often use his quotes, and he's got lots. But he said, if the rate of change on the outside exceeds the rate of change on the inside, then the end is near. And we are seeing radical changes in the outside world. And we need to change our businesses to adapt. At ISG, we're going through our own digital transformation now. We're completely changing the way we think, the way we report, the way we serve our customers. All the things we've talked about now, we are doing internally. And change before you have to, which I think is a very, very sensible quote of Jack's. That's it.